I don't think it's fair to judge others.
Well, if you saw someone kicking a dog here,
Yeah.
would you judge them for that?
Yeah, of course.
So if they're eating something that they know all the
Yeah.
full process, is it, what, do you
I know,
think,
but it's people don't
social
like
inertia,
people
isn't it?
don't
Because-
like being judged, and I think it's.
Well, you judge them in your head, wouldn't you? If someone was
No,
kicking a dog,
yeah,
you'd
that,
go that. So
of
what's
course.
But what's worse, that or cutting someone's throat? Right. Okay. Thanks for agreeing to my social experiment. I really appreciate it. All it is I just ask people a few questions and ask them to think about those questions and just respond with the answers. There's no trick questions or anything. All that I need is for people to be intellectually honest with the questions. And sometimes things could be a little bit triggering, but just to try and if we just, put egos aside and that type of thing, So my first question is, what do you think about animals? It's all about animals. What do you think about
I love
them?
animals.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay, any animals in particular?
Cats.
Yeah.
Dogs.
Yeah.
Geese.
Okay.
The funny animals.
Yeah.
I think probably one of my favourite animals is otters. I've always liked otters. Well, even as a kid, I used to
they're
gravitate towards the otters and the penguins at the zoo and stuff and watch them. And, yeah, and we teach yoga and we do yoga events called Connect to Nature in RSPB Burton Mere, where we go on like a nature walk and look at not just the birds, but also some of like the animals, like there's little lizards, and there's been an otter in RSP Burton Mere. I've not seen it yet, although they did post a video of the otter rolling on its back playing. So hopefully one time we'll see that soon.
Nice. Okay. And then here, I don't know if you've ever been out and seen all the seals.
In
Hillbrow
Hillbrow.
and
Yeah.
lovely
Yeah,
as
and
well.
I like all the the winter birds that you get here. I love.
Yeah, I saw a really cute bird on the lake. There was a couple of them called goldeneye yesterday, and they're really cute little black and white. I think they're duck. I think they're a duck rather than a duck rather than a goose. But and they've got like a little yellow golden eye. They're dead cute.
Right, brilliant. Okay, so I get the sense from you two that you're very keen on respecting, other animals.
Yeah, we're both vegetarian, and
Oh,
we were vegan for a long time as well. So
Became vegetarian because we've got a dog. Well, we had a dog and then we've got another dog now. But just became vegetarian when I had a dog and realised what's the difference between the animals that I'm eating and the pet that I've got. And
Okay. You guys have made it really easy for me because that's the way I'm going. So I don't need to go and drag out anymore because we kind of got there already. I'm an animal rights activist.
Cool.
Yeah. So I'm vegan myself.
Yeah.
Because, like yourself, I came to the realisation that if I love dogs and cats, why am I paying people to put pigs into gas chambers? Cut their throats, cut their tails off without anaesthesia, cut their teeth out, all these horrible practices. Things like, you mentioned about vegetarian, I went vegetarian first because I thought, well, vegan, that's a bit extreme. What's wrong with milk and eggs? But then when you look into it, and it's so well hidden, do you know much about dairy and eggs?
I do, and I feel a little bit guilty sometimes having gone back to being vegetarian.
Right.
But because when my mum died about 18 months ago, and I just had a craving for a Cadbury's twirl, and I just thought if Cadbury's twirl's going to help me through this, I'm going to do it.
Right.
But I'm pretty much 100% vegan at home. I always cook vegan. I've just found being a little bit flexible around the vegetarian side has just been a bit helpful and a bit more enjoyable going for meals and stuff. Especially when you live in in this village here, the vegan options aren't great in a lot of places, and it's just nice to have the bit of flexibility,
But they're getting more, they're expanding, aren't they, with the vegan options? As people, because for me, it's this kind of social inertia and that people have, that if everyone else is doing it, eating meat, it objectifies it, doesn't it? People don't actually. They become disconnected with the fact that it's actually that was an animal that has just had feelings, that had families, that had a will to live, that wanted to avoid pain, that just wanted to go about their lives without interference from humans.
I also respect that some people have different moral perspectives on that as well, and respect that people's right to have that different opinion. Like my dad was a butcher, so you know I kind of, and when he was training as a butcher, he had to go through right from the start to the end of the whole process. You know, they had to do a stint in an abattoir, which I'd find horrendous and wouldn't do it. But you know, I think if people are able to do that and their attitudes and morals towards animals are, I can respect that whilst not agreeing with it. You know,
I think it's this idea that making a bit of a difference is better than doing none at all. So for example,
I agree.
Like, I don't know if they still do it, but we went on a holiday to Belgium once, and there's a city called Ghent, and they had vegetarian Mondays basically, and or what's that, meat-free Mondays, things that Paul McCartney, you know. And I think sometimes that can be helpful for people. I feel that when you're talking to people over the years since I've been vegetarian, that more people are doing that. They're having less meat and having less meat, and they're making a bit of a difference that way.
Yeah, being flexitarian, they call it.
Yeah, and I see that a lot, and I think that's it's better than nothing, isn't it?
But even going back to like what my dad, I remember him saying that, you know, meat when he was a kid was a treat. You know, it was a luxury. They didn't have it every day, but culture and society's evolved to eating it every single day, or sometimes multiple times a day, which just seems odd, you know. And you go back, I don't know, say 80 years or something, when my dad was a kid, you know, meat was a treat once every so often. And I think in general it might have been, you know, I don't know, I think his gran had chickens, so, you know, if they wanted chicken, they had to go and kill a chicken and do that, and they'd use the whole thing, you know. And I know one of the things my dad was always keen on as a butcher was that you shouldn't waste a single thing, you know. And I think, you know, we're outside Morrison's here, aren't we? And I think supermarkets just package things in little packages so it doesn't even look like an animal, and so
exactly
disconnected from what it actually is. If people were buying a chicken that looked like a plucked chicken, I think they'd think twice around.
Well, I think if what another social experiment I've done before is, you know, if you had to be the one who, for a glass of milk, first of all, someone brought out a calf and said, okay, you're going to have to shoot this calf in the head. First of all, if you want it, I think a lot of people would stop drinking milk. Do you know what I mean? But I take your point about, you know, less is better. I totally agree with you. But where I'm coming from as well, because I can't fully agree with that or get on board with that, because it's about the individual, the rights of the individual. We wouldn't say, for example, well, we could say, it's kind of related to this, that the world would be a better place, it'd be more sustainable if half the population, global population, was gone. But we wouldn't use that as a justification for getting rid of half of the population, would we? Because everyone is an individual, and we've got to respect those individuals' rights. And, you know, I hear people sometimes saying, well, you know, I respected the animal, I used the whole body and all of that, but that means nothing to the actual individual animal, does it? That makes us feel better. It doesn't make the animal feel any better.
I was just saying regarding like having less stuff, is that can sometimes be, I think, more manageable for people. That this idea that if you have rather than going from having nothing, no meat, or, you know, going vegan, that might be too much for people. So it might be more, I can't think of the word, but people might find it manageable to start. Yeah. For example, when I was vegetarian now, but I remember someone telling me, basically, just do what you can. You know, take the pressure off, because I felt overfaced by the idea of being vegan, and they said, well, just try your best, really. And I found that helpful, you know, and then it's less overwhelming then, I think. And it is easy now, of course it is, you know, the options, it is usually an option in a restaurant. And the problem is sometimes with vegan options is some things being really overproduced, or, you know, really you can get really unhealthy.
Something like processed foods.
Yeah, processed, like really overly processed stuff, which the health you know, that can be.
Yeah, well, but I, you know, generally I make stuff from scratch.
Yeah,
I
it's
use a
different
lot
when
of
you eat at home.
tofu, tempeh,
absolutely.
Lentils, pulses, stuff like that. But also there are some good brands and stuff. I think M&S are quite good with their like vegan range, Plant Kitchen stuff, and then there's also sometimes get some stuff from Iceland. Is it called Oomph? Have you seen that?
Good,
That's tasty. And I don't think I remember looking at the back, and I don't remember it looking like a chemical experiment on the back. You know,
and we had that vegan turkey, didn't we? Wasn't it for Christmas?
That was the M&S turkey, M&S vegan turkey.
Yeah, it was nice.
My dad didn't even know it was vegan at first. He thought it was turkey.
I bet he found out though, and he went. I bet he thought, "Oh, this is really nice." You told him it's vegan. Went, "Oh, it's disgusting."
No, honestly, he didn't. He's quite open-minded. Actually, he loved it.
Okay.
And actually, I did those Richmond vegan sausages in Richmond vegan bacon, so we had pigs in blankets thing as well.
Yeah. So that is where I'm coming from. Though it's about, we can say that less is better, and I totally agree with you. And I've got a lot of respect for that. Obviously, you're given that consideration, and you've become mindful of that they're individuals, and these nicely packaged items are worth someone. They weren't just something. You know what I mean? But I would still sort of challenge you to say that things like the dairy industry. The dairy industry is just essentially an extension of the beef industry. So when you're supporting the dairy industry, you are also by extension supporting the beef industry. With eggs, people think that they're just a benign sort of thing, isn't it? They just pop them out and that's okay. But there's so many layers to that of cruelty to that. In terms of them being genetically modified to give so many eggs, because they came from the red guinea fowl originally.
Right. Yeah.
And then they were genetically modified time and time again to give like an egg nearly every single day. It's essentially like a menstrual cycle of a woman. And their bodies aren't equipped to deal with that. So all the nutrients are being lost. So they're in a really bad way. They're often just sort of like dying on their faces. And once they can no longer produce to the same level, I'm sure you can guess what happens to them. They're culled. So then they last about a year, and then their production slows. So they just get rid of them because they need it at such a high production.
Well, to be honest with you, the only eggs we've eaten in recent times have been from a lady that rescues hens that are going to slaughter from the industry, and she saves them, and then they live a really nice life, and then so kind of. Yeah, but then it's still sometimes, because it is basically a hen's menstrual cycle. Sometimes I've kind of thought of eggs and thought.
Me personally, I don't really have a particular issue if she's rescued them and they're the eggs that they're given. I think that there is an argument to be made for that you can. A lot of people in sanctuaries will smash the eggs back on the ground, and the chickens run up to eat all of that because it contains all the nutrients they've lost because they've been so genetically modified that they really need those nutrients. But I suppose if there's the odd one, I don't really have an issue with that. Where people talk about like backyard hens and that's okay because no one's getting hurt, but it is perpetuating the same system because they get them from hatcheries, and hatcheries, if the chicks are born male. Do you know what happens to them? They're put into an industrial scale macerator. They're considered waste products. So literally born within a few hours, blended.
Yeah, I don't think that happens in the UK, does it? I've seen those. I've seen those macerated videos, but I think they're the States.
I think it was banned in France recently.
Gassed in the UK. I know like I know you put splitting hairs, but it's kind of.
I don't think it's been banned in the UK. I know it was banned in France in recent times. And it might very well be on the cusp of being banned here, but gassing it, or putting them in big bags enough to suffocate them. This is one of a few different ways.
One thing I would say though is, I totally support what you're saying, where you're coming from, and I think we're on the same page with that stuff. But I also understand that some people will have different opinions, and I think there's got to be space for that. I don't think we can all have the same opinion on certain things.
Okay.
And I think. There's a wildness to us as animals, and I think some people just make the choice, and I know all the biological stuff about the human body and how really it's kind of designed really the digestive system to eat vegetables and be vegetarian.
Yes.
And we don't have canines to rip things apart and stuff like that. And but I do also think some people will make different decisions, and I think the world would be probably a very boring place if we all had the same opinion on everything.
Yeah, well, I agree with you that it would be a boring place if we all did the same thing, and people will always do things. For example, people will always be racist. Doesn't mean we need to join in with them, does it?
No,
do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
I know I'm not saying that you're insinuating that, but the other thing as well is that people can have difference of opinions, but I think it's generally people's morals are that exploitation and violence is wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, but I also think
most people.
I also think people are trying their best, aren't they? Or trying their best given their history and their place in life. And I think sometimes one of the ways that we like to try to kind of influence people is just by just by being vegetarian and talking about it, but not trying to be too dogmatic about it, or not trying to kind of guilt trip people into changing their opinion, but by making like nice food,
However,
making meals for people and say, oh look, this is nice, you don't need meat in you.
I think that's one way of can make a difference, by making people vegetarian food or showing them that it's nice. And there's lots to it.
Like when we do our yoga events, for example, like we did one at Nest Gardens recently, a retreat day, and we had a vegan afternoon tea there. And it was vegan for everyone, and it was
It
was
go
just
down
nice.
well, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Of course,
There was hardly anything left.
It was really nice.
You do nice vegan food at Nest Gardens.
But also,
right?
I do see the value in people being made aware of the industry, because you might not know, because it's so hidden from you.
We've got to be bold to talk about it, is my view. Like, because otherwise, if people want people like me to not speak, to be quiet, because that's what suits the industry. Do you know what I mean? It suits people who feel a little bit guilty about it to just put it to the back of their mind.
I do think it'll work for some people, but I think for some people it'd put them off. They say, no, I'm doing what I want to do, and you're not today. But for some people it'll work.
But you can understand why some activists, you've probably heard of some of them who are a little bit more radical than say myself, and they do get angry and frustrated, because I do as well. Because when people sort of say, "Oh, it's just an animal," we're animals as well. You know what I mean? Like,
I know.
It's kind of this superiority complex, isn't it? That in history people have had, and they've made justifications for doing terrible things to other groups. Do you know what I mean? Oh, it's just a black person. Oh, it's just a woman. You know what I mean?
I suppose the complexity is that we're humans and we've evolved cognitively to have better brains and society and culture compared to the rest of the animal kingdom, where it is a kind of dog-eat-dog world, and there is a food chain and a hierarchy.
But in our society, we say we protect the vulnerable, don't we?
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And don't you think that we go against at odds with that when we're exploiting some? Because the animals that we exploit, they never hurt anyone. I don't think.
No, they're not
ever,
attacking.
Other by inadvertently
No,
pigs,
no.
chickens,
No,
cows, sheep. It's not like we're tackling lions, is it, or anything like that? We're picking the most vulnerable ones,
and we've purposely domesticated them to be even milder, haven't we? I know.
Absolutely.
The whole kind of ethics of that is bad, isn't it?
And I want to go back to your point about sort of the natural thing, what people would sometimes call appeal to nature fallacy. About that we can do something. It's just because we can do something. Like, I can make a fist, I can punch someone, and in history we have used our force to dominate other people. Doesn't mean that it's moral to do so, does it? And in nature, all sorts of messed up stuff happens, doesn't it?
But I think that's a key thing. What you're saying about the moral. It depends what your morals are.
Well, absolutely, but this is where I go back to what I was saying.
I think our morals are probably on a very similar page, whereas some people have different morals, and I think, and whilst it's good to try and change them and influence them to change. I think, going back to what I was saying before, but I think people are trying their best at any given moment, given where they are in life. I wasn't vegetarian as a child, but I came to the point I had a best friend, Rob, and his girlfriend Janine, who were vegetarian when I was in my sort of late teens, early 20s, and I used to think, oh, this is quite nice, this food. But looking back, it probably wasn't. I think it was Bean Feast. It used to be like, I don't know if you remember Bean Feast. It was like this powdered thing you used to get in like hot water. It's basically like a vegan pot noodly type sludge, and it was brown. But anyway, it's quite nice. You used it to make like kind of bolognese type stuff. But I remember I used to get some of that in for if they came round, But say I was brought up in a household where my dad was a butcher and stuff. So my journey towards becoming vegetarian and vegan was a bit slower. How I was brought up, the influences I had there. And it wasn't until was in my 30s, I think. Would it have been? 2011 became vegetarian. I think it was pescatarian first. And then I remember going fishing, and I killed a fish, and I felt its heart stop in my hand, and it stuck with me. And then when I went pescatarian, it was like, well, I can't justify being pescatarian when the thing that's actually stuck with me in the head was feeling this trout's heart stop in my hand.
And I think a lot of people almost think that fish aren't quite an animal in some way. They kind of think they're just this sort of floating thing, because they look so different to us, and they don't have limbs and things like that.
Oh, you see it on vegetarian menus when you go away sometimes.
Do you?
And you see fish on it or whatever. When I was in Spain recently, I ordered a an omelette with vegetables, and it was because there wasn't much on the menu, and
It was just
then
mushrooms, wasn't it? Mushrooms.
it was mushrooms, and then it was like ham and like there was prawns. I was like, oh, okay.
She'd thrown a few extras in.
So
Right,
well,
yeah,
anyway.
well, that's what I mean, and a lot of people just don't have a clue still.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's so important to talk to people about it. You know, people will accuse you of being pushy, but what's more pushy, I think, is people pushing animals into slaughterhouses when there's absolutely no need to do it. We can thrive without doing all of this stuff, and actually, I feel a lot healthier. I've lost a bit of weight since I went vegetarian and vegan about 6 years ago. And I just feel a lot better that I can actually say, or to myself at least, that my morals align with my actions, and they never used to. But I was in a state of social inertia that I didn't even really think about it. We just go about doing what we do in our day-to-day lives.
Well, you're a product of the society you're brought up in, aren't you? And when things are the norm, that's the norm for you. You know.
But should we not challenge that?
Oh yeah. Whereas if you were brought up, say, it's in areas of southern India where just generally vegetarian, as default, and it would be rarer to eat meat there.
I think there's different ways of challenging stuff, and I think different things will work for just different people, basically.
Definitely.
And some people, as I said, would be very. You'll find this, I'm sure, by talking to people, that some people will be receptive. And we'll probably make changes
I've had
based
people
on
shouting at me.
Yeah, of course, because
I was talking to them like I was talking to you.
Yeah, exactly.
But they get
and you'll
angry because
find
it triggers a bit of a guilt in them.
Yeah.
And that's the first stage of starting to think
and reflect on it.
It is.
Yeah, because some people, you got to understand, well, people have different kind of learning styles as well, and personalities. Some people are reflectors, aren't they? If you challenge like a reflector, they'll probably meet you with aggression and anger, but then they'll go home and reflect about it, and maybe something starts processing, and they might change their mind, or they might just think, oh no, I'm happy with how I am.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the hardest thing for me about being vegan, it's not about the options, it's not about living my life with what I eat, with what I do, where places that I go. It's about the navigating relationships with other people, and so people sort of sometimes being quite condescending or trying to take the mick because you're vegan, which is so ironic to me because vegans are the ones who are standing up saying no, this isn't right. It's the easy route to go and buy all these products, and get people to pay to produce them, not have to see it, and have the industries pay a lot of money so that the consumer doesn't see it. Do you know what I mean? It's so ironic, and just relationships. Like my wife is not vegan, but she does eat a lot more because I won't cook the other stuff. You know what I mean? I won't buy the other stuff. She does. And my children, they're not. But my youngest drinks oat milk. He uses the butter that I use that doesn't have dairy. This is where I think where you can only be responsible for yourself. You can't sort of, I can't impose it on other people.
But you're being an example to them, aren't you? Which is nice, a positive example. And if they want to eat more of that or have that sort of stuff.
Well, that's it. And sometimes like my 8-year-old will go, why don't you eat meat, Daddy? And this, that, and the other. And to be honest, I've toyed with the idea of telling him a bit more of the details, but I think I can't. At the moment, I'm like, I can't put him through that because he's in this little bubble of being an 8-year-old.
You could just have something like I love animal,
But I plan to tell them when they're a little bit older. I do plan to tell them.
And then you make an informed choice, don't you? You know about it, and then you can decide for yourself, can't you?
One of our nephews who became vegetarian very young, didn't he? Because he loved animals.
Just because he loved animals.
Remember him saying he loved animals, and it made the association that
that's really good.
Chicken were hens,
I just didn't even think about it. Really, you can understand. I can understand people eat meat because I used to, and you can see how you just don't even think about it. And also, I don't judge. I don't judge people if they choose to, because it is their choice. Although I wouldn't, I'd always be vegetarian. I don't think it's fair to judge others.
Well, if you saw someone kicking a dog here, would you judge them for that?
Yeah, of course.
So if they're eating something that they know all the full process,
I know, but it's people don't like being judged, and I think it's.
But you judge them in your head, wouldn't you? If someone was kicking a dog, you'd go that.
So of course.
But what's worse, that or cutting someone's throat?
No, I say I know what you're saying, but I don't. I think it's actually. I don't think I'm better than other people who eat meat, and I think it can come across sometimes with vegans that they think they're better than people who eat meat, and I don't think that's fair, and people don't like that, and it'll actually push people the other way.
Yeah.
You know, and because yeah.
I think it'd be a different situation if you went into a supermarket and you asked for, I don't know, like a gammon steak or something, and the butcher said, just hang on 1 minute, and got a pig out the back and slit its throat in the butcher's. That's different, isn't it? The whole manufacturing industry and processing industry has made it very far removed from the actual killing of an animal to you going into a shop and buying it. So, you know, and even like if you look at old pictures of butchers in this country, they had the carcasses of animals hung up.
They still do in like Spain that you were mentioning before, don't they? Places like that,
And I think in some cultures, you know, so like places like Spain where it's still very visible, you know, and people are making a decision, that's fine morally that I'm going to go and do that, and that's their, you know, their decision to make, knowing where it's come from. And you know, when we went on holiday to Vietnam, there were little stalls at the side of the road, and it was horrendous, but like there was ducks in cages alive, next to another duck on a spit being cooked, and you know that one's next in line. But you know that culture is knowing where that's come from, and they know it's visible, and people are making a decision. Well, I like that, I'm going to eat it. You know, I don't think, you know, for me morally, I don't like that, and I wouldn't engage that. But you know, I know what you're saying about like the idea of like, oh, would you criticise somebody for kicking a dog? Yeah, but at the same time, that's not the same as somebody just going in and buying something off a shelf, even because they're not actually doing the act themselves. They're funding it and they're contributing to it by doing so, but people are detached from that. So you can't to say to somebody who's just gone in and bought a steak or something for their dinner, oh, you're a murderer. Well, they haven't murdered anything themselves. They've actually, you know, they're contributing to the whole process, yes, but it's their decision to make.
It's the lack of awareness, isn't it? And that's the difference, isn't it? Because it's and you know, I'm sure that if I had a chicken here and I went to cut the chicken's throat, people would be running over, stopping me. But then probably a lot of them will be paying for that to happen anyway. It's just the fact that it's hidden. And I think that also, you know, when I said about the kicking the dog thing, that's socially unacceptable, isn't it? To kick a dog, whereas it's socially acceptable to kill all these other animals, isn't it?
Well,
you know,
it's if you had a pig here and you'd slit its throat and you'd drain the blood out of it,
it'd be the same. People would be they'd be calling me for everything and probably attacking me. But you know, that's exactly what's happening just behind it. Behind it.
Well, it's like that. I don't remember what it's up. I remember seeing that thing if abattoirs had glass walls. You know,
Paul McCartney.
Is it Paul McCartney said that? Yeah. You know, I think the best way is to influence people through positive action of like trying to encourage people through nice food options and making things more readily available. Personally, you know, and people like Paul McCartney, is it Jared Leto's vegan, isn't he? I think, and people like that who are just using their fame as a vehicle to say, well, you know, and if people, especially people like McCartney, is he like 83 or something now, or something like that, you know, and he's a great example of being vegetarian. You know, he's healthy.
I would say though that I don't think vegetarians quite enough for the animals, for the individual.
Actually, though,
I don't think he is.
I think I read recently he was, you know.
Okay,
I think
that's fantastic.
I'd have to Google it, but I'm pretty certain he's mostly vegan.
Okay, and when I say vegetarian's not enough, I do have a lot of respect for you, both of you, for being vegetarian. It's just that I'm coming from the angle of the individuals, and that there are in the process for eggs, for milk, there are individuals that still get killed and get treated like an object, treated terribly, because of those for eggs and milk and stuff. That's what I'm not saying, and you know, going back to what you were saying about being better than anyone else, that's not what it's about for me. For me, it's about like spreading that awareness, because like I say, a lot of people just do not know, or they may have an inkling, but then they put it to the back of the mind because it's this social inertia of it's not something that we think about. It's not something that and that's I just think it's important to spread awareness. And I get accused sometimes of being pushy. It's one of those things. If people aren't receptive to the information, often the default is to say, you're being pushy, you're trying to impose things on me, which is ironic, as I said before, because we're forcing the animals into situations that they don't need to be in. And not only that, but if you're concerned about like sort of conservation stuff, which I get the sense that you are, animal agriculture is a leading cause of deforestation, of habitat loss, and it's one of the biggest drivers of climate change. You do
It's
aware of that as
also
well?
contributes hugely to methane, isn't it, into the atmosphere and stuff like that.
Yeah, so there's lots and lots of different ways, isn't there, of spreading awareness, and different approaches will work for different people, and some approaches will put people off. And it's unfortunate, but that is true. But for example, you said about the environmental aspect, that'll work for some people, whereas others, they're not bothered about the environment, or they won't think about it. Whereas the cruelty aspect of animals, that'll work for them. So there's just different ways of spreading information, isn't there?
Yeah, the reason why I came to it is because I just thought, well, I wouldn't kill an animal myself, so.
Yeah.
And as simple as that for me. I know the whole environmental thing's important as well, but it was just simply, well, I wouldn't kill an animal myself.
Brilliant. Really appreciate the conversation today. Thank you.